There are 1, 2, 3 dudes, and it's a Thursday on the Podcast Daily. It's a 3 dudes Thursday. It's not going to be 3 thoughts because we got like 300 thoughts to get to after talking to Ohio State's quarterbacks and running backs after practice number 2. That's not a great number. It's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. So where should we begin? I guess we have to start with the quarterbacks, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. I would rather start with like Billy Fessler though than any one player. I just continue to be very impressed by him. He's pretty sharp, and I like the way he's sort of talking about this room. Like, he had a very good quote toward the end of his availability, talking about what Ryan Day said the other day about how the quarterback has to be the hardest working guy, first one in, last one out kind of thing. And he said, like, yeah, they saw the quote, and it's easy to do that, like, the day after you hear the quote. But can you do it, I think he said, like, practice 11. Can you do it on June 17th? Can you do it in August? Can you do it in November kind of thing? And I was like, all right. Like, he's been around the program, so, like, he understands what this is, and that's not surprising. But a part of me wondered, like, you know, for a guy who's still relatively young, how he might feel about, like, handling this sort of awesome responsibility of trying to figure out who Ohio State's next starting quarterback is going to be. And of course, it's Ryan Day's ultimate decision, but it's Billy Fessler who has to get those guys ready. And I, like, every time we talk to him, I just, like, become more and more, I guess, reassured that he can handle it, even though he is obviously a very young guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, Joe Moorhead make a lot of accidents. If they are impressed with somebody's acumen, the relationship building, the recruiting, the knowledge on the field, like, there's generally a good reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just impressed by it seems much more like the quarterback debate, whatever we want to call it, the competition.
That's not the word.
The controversy,
what would you use?
whatever you want to call it.
What do you call it?
It feels like spring right now is a complete, like, psych eval by Billy Fessler and the rest of the coaching staff. It's like, how are these guys mentally? And I think you could see it even with Julian Sain, who didn't speak to the media much last year. He had opportunities, and he was never, I'm not going to say comfortable. I'm not even sure that I would call what he was on Tuesday or Wednesday.
He wasn't quite ready for that, I don't think.
But he wasn't. He was better than I would have thought and better than I would have expected based on the number of people who are all of a sudden shoving a microphone and cameras in your face. So,
and asking him the same question.
And asking him the same question over and over. So I think that you could see from him, from Lincoln Kienholz, even from Tavian St. Clair, they're all taking the cue of saying, are you going to be the professional? Are you going to be the leader? Are you going to be the guy that steps up and answers the tough questions? I'm always impressed by Tavian. I'm not going to even start to suggest that he's going to be truly involved in the quarterback competition, but he gets it, and I think that is the thing when you're dealing with a young quarterback coach. And Fessler's 29 years old. Like, he has to be able to communicate and teach these kids on a very personal, very different level, I think, than a coach who's been around for a long time, because they're going to be questioning his bona fides the whole time, you know? Like, he's 29. How can he know this stuff? So he has to be, like, sharp to really get these kids to respect his opinion, I think. Which they do.
I don't know if I would go that far, because they didn't hire a 29-year-old off the street to do this.
Well, no, but it's still in human nature. If you look at a guy and he looks younger than you,
well, he's got the stubble coming in a little bit.
I'm just saying. I think that he has.
Lincoln can't even grow a beard yet.
He's in a position. I don't think Lincoln will ever grow a beard, but Billy's in a unique position just because, like, he's given the keys to this offense and this kingdom where the Ohio State quarterback is yours to figure out. And I think we all have an idea where it's going, but the goal for Billy Fessler has to be to convince these kids that they're all that guy. And that's weird.
Well, I don't know if he has to convince them of that, because if they didn't believe, all 3 of them, that they could do it at Ohio State, they still wouldn't be here.
Maybe. They got a feel for it last year too. Well, yeah. Julian said, I'm sure the other guys did too, but Julian said, like, I'm glad he got elevated because we saw what he did last year with them. Yeah.
And they, you know, Billy Fessler was around for Tavian St. Clair's recruitment, spent all last year in the room with Lincoln Kienholz and Julian Sain. So that continuity piece is important, although it's funny to call it that, because technically Ohio State's quarterback coach has changed 3 years in a row. So they would benefit from that. And I think probably why Billy Fessler's promotion was more important than maybe we initially led on.
That is something I hadn't really thought about in terms of Lincoln Kienholz's development until today. I mean, to go from Corey Dennis to Chip Kelly to Billy Fessler in a 16-month stretch is kind of insane.
Yeah, it's a lot to throw at him. And I think that you normalize it a little bit, stabilize that position. That would be beneficial for everybody. But there's a long way to go for those quarterbacks. And I'm glad that we got it out of the way after practice number 2 in a lot of respects, because you said, I don't think Julian Sayin was all that comfortable in front of the microphones, but I don't know how anyone would be when the questions are like, hey, can you win the job right now? Do you feel like you're the starter? How do you prove that you're the starter? Can you be the toughest guy? How can you prove you're the toughest guy? Like, there's not a lot
Circle drill
to dig into that. Well, they're not going to do that. And they're also not going to hit him in practices. So I thought that, Lincoln's answer was probably the best one for that one, because he's like, well, we're still lifting weights. So there's going to be some toughness there. And Lincoln does have a little bit of an edge in that department. But you almost have to set the rest aside. I've said it already for the last couple of weeks. Like, we see them make the 1-inch throws, and they're going to have live 7-on-7, but it's really comparing where they were a year ago to now, or December and January to now. And I think all of them have shown signs of improvement. Tavian's, at practice number 2, if you count whatever happened during the bowl practices, he's got a little bit of a head start, but trying to lump him into that is unfair in a lot of ways. But, Julian Sayin is bigger, and Lincoln Keenholz is seemingly more accurate, and that's where the quarterbacks are.
First question to Billy Fessler was like, how close is the competition? And he said, I'm not even thinking about the competition, which is, again, like we talked about it the other day. It's a good reminder of just like what this program's mindset is toward that particular position battle. And I was reminded earlier this week that the earliest Ryan Day's ever named the starting quarterback is August 16th, which was last year with Will Howard. So, like, I just think answers and, like, finality, or even like things bordering on concrete, I don't know that they're going to come out a whole lot in the spring. We're not going to be able to watch practice again until the 5th. So there'll be a lot of work in between now and then. The quarterbacks will get in, and I'm eager to see what they look like, because that'll be a more or less like a scrimmage setting. So that'll be pretty instructive. But between now and then, like, I don't know what else there is to say about the quarterback competition, other than, like, the focus is not really on the competition. It's on, like, the individuals becoming better leaders, finding their voice, working on some things mechanically, and, like, a lot of minutia, and not, like, the big thing of, like, can you handle this job yet?
When we were out here 12 days ago with all of the assistant coaches, Carlos Lachlan was making it a point to tell people to stop putting James Peoples as the presumptive starter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes for the coaches, their job is to lower the temperature on the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we've all had the expectation that Julian Sayin will be the starting quarterback. We've all seen how quick he gets rid of the ball, the flick of the wrist, and Billy Fessler was pretty clear, like, okay, but we can't sacrifice arm strength in order for this. So, like, saying, hey, we got to work on Julian's core, getting him stronger. Like, it is a reminder that all these guys are, yes, Lincoln Keenholz has been here for 6 months longer than Julian Sayin, and Julian Sayin's been here for a year longer than Tavian St. Clair, but they're all pretty much at the same spot as far as what it means to be the quarterback at Ohio State. So I don't think that there's going to be any real deviation from, like, we think Julian eventually is going to win the job, but I don't think we should even look at this spring from a perspective of how good has this guy been. It's like, what is he learning? Like, it is 4 weeks of education, as I've said a few times in the last couple of weeks.
Julian did answer your question. He didn't seem impressed.
Well, he said his flow was just getting too long. And I was just amazed at the turnover and how quickly he went from celebrating a national championship in Atlanta to getting back here. And first thing he did was get the old coif cut. And he said he's going to look for a happy medium somewhere. I don't think he likes how short it is now, but it was getting a little flowy.
Okay.
What if he shows up with, like, just like a bald head?
I did notice, though, because it's also a thing, like Fahim Delane, who famously sported dreads in high school, TJ Alford sported dreads in high school. They've cut him. And I asked Fahim, I'm like, what's the deal with this?
Yeah.
He said, this is a new start. It's almost like you have to earn
your
dreads.
hair?
Yeah. So.
All right.
They looked good on Caden McDonald and Edric Houston.
Well, they've earned him.
They've earned him. That's fair. Yeah. But it wasn't purely just like, hey, you need to go be the professional. He said that wasn't really.
Yeah.
Wasn't a business cut.
Wasn't a business cut. And that he's not like.
Obviously, the question is, I'm asking it is meant to be somewhat off.
It's an icebreaker.
Yeah. And I want to know, is it we saw when Quinn Ewers cut his hair a year and a half ago at Texas, it was a huge ordeal. But now Quinn's hair may have been a touch more famous than Julian's. But I also think that it was indicative of Quinn trying to be a different type of leader. And it is relevant for a California cool kid from Carlsbad to, like, cut your flow.
Yeah. And I think
Then we played hacky sack.
it was It was a wild scene. And Julian Sand was talking, he and Lincoln both talked about seeing that leadership style, and it's not about their haircuts or not about setting your alarm 15 minutes earlier, but making sure that your presence is felt in this building if you're the quarterback, and understanding that responsibility is on your shoulders. Seeing that from Will Howard, again, that's belaboring the point, but I thought Julian Sand like took it in a little bit different direction, which is like they saw what he did, and Julian's not going to do it the exact same way as Will Howard. Most people won't or can't,
but
are unable.
That is where the difference between Tavian and Lincoln Lincoln and Julian and Tavian is, because I was talking to Tavian. He's like, I have to learn how to get up on time. I have to learn how to, make my own dinner. And that is the adjustment that the freshmen are trying to make, that there is that advantage for Lincoln and
which is different. That is why we say that Tavian's path for this year is different than the other two, because Lincoln Kienholz and Julian Sand are smart guys, and they can understand the opportunity that's in front of them and the responsibility that is going to be asked of them. Lincoln has never been the most outspoken guy, but he's also never been in a position at Ohio State where he had to be. Yeah. So he's learning how to do that. That's one of the things on his plate, is setting a vocal tone and leading by example and workouts and doing all those other things.
In a bizarre way, Tavian is the most comfortable with this group of media, because he's been around everyone.
He's seen them all,
the last 2 years, and everyone in this room has at some point made the trip to Bell Fountain, or so they've all met him, and so he's actually lived
there for a while.
Yeah, well, there was a Del Taco there. When you sit out here with these three guys, Tavian's the one that's the most comfortable talking to everyone, which is a little bit of an interesting twist.
Well, one of the benefits of being and finding an Ohio quarterback if you can.
Yeah, a local.
But you also look for talent. Sometimes that could be in South Dakota. Sometimes it can be in California. It's an interesting room.
Sometimes it can be in West Virginia.
Can it?
As a running back.
Wow.
Segue.
Yeah.
Wow. How about that?
17-pound difference.
18.
Well, he said 18, but then when he gave the numbers
he gave were 17.
The numbers were 17.
He said 243, and then he's down to 225. Did he bump it up to
226?
He must have had an extra Gatorade after I walked away. I knew that was the case. You could look on film and compare it to what we saw. Or even when you think back to January.
We're talking about
C.J. Donaldson, as Berm segues us into a conversation about the running backs. He's like, he has changed his body pretty significantly in a short period of time. Says he feels good. He looks good. He said he's running like the Flash, which he had good speed already. He ran track, and you saw that at West Virginia with a few of the runs that he had. I think combine that, I mentioned it coming into practice number 2. It's like, you saw the changes. What are they going to mean, and how does that translate? I think I would feel good if I was Carlos Loughlin about the talent in that room, because he's still gushing about Bo Jackson, who certainly likes Bo Jackson. Certainly looks the part. James Peoples, there's still a lot of confidence in him, and C.J. Donaldson was given a chance to come to Ohio State, and he, up till now, March 19th, heading into March 20th, today, Thursday, has, I think, made the most of it by far. What does it mean for 6 months from now? I don't know, but you like the returns that you're getting at this point.
I thought, so the roster we got at the start of spring said like 237, and then we saw him on Monday. I was like, I don't think so. So I was glad to hear it was 226. Because if you watch him, especially like the last 2 years compared to his freshman year before he got hurt, the suddenness like wasn't there. The big play stuff like wasn't there. Part of that I think is like bumps and bruises, but I think part of it is just like the ability to get back up to that top speed again once you encounter contact for the first time. So if he's in position to be, I would say maybe like the best he's been in his career at that, then you're talking about a heck of a running back. So I think I said the other day that I'm rethinking a little bit of like what his role actually will be here, and I'm continuing to do that based off some of the stuff that CJ said today. Like, for as good as he was at West Virginia, and I thought he was a pretty good back there, like he stands a very good chance to be something much more than that. Like, with the work he's put in, and also with the offense, I said to him, like, because we talked about like he's running the like loaded boxes a lot at West Virginia, and I said, did you know that? And he said no, and I said, like, well, it was 60% of the time. He's like, oh, I didn't know it was that high. But he said he liked this offense because of the balance and the space that I think will be afforded to him. So if you combine those two things, like him making strides as an individual and just being in a more conducive environment to be a little more efficient as a running back, then I think you're looking at a guy who stands a chance to break out pretty substantially this year.
I'm finding myself more and more drawn to the personality type of a player who transfers into Ohio State for year 4 or 5, and knowing that it is going to provide a launching pad for his career, because the personality, like I was not expecting CJ Donaldson to be that like bubbly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I can't think of a better
Call
word.
him bubbly to his face.
He just had a really like great engaging personality, and I wonder.
I think really it was just very mature.
Yeah, like and I think for a room that is obviously returning no one that's played, you need that maturity, and I think he's going to be more valuable than we would have anticipated, based on A, what he looks like and what he's running like the Flash, but B, the ability to be a
Those are
leader
his words.
in that room,
Not
because
sure
someone
I'm
has
for
to
it.
be a leader in that room. And I wonder if you're a place like West Virginia, if you're a coach and you walk in, and Rich Rod walks in the first day and gets to talk to him, it's like, oh crap, this kid's leaving. He doesn't fit here. He was just too. He's too Ohio State. He was like he was like
too Ohio
he
State.
was like that kid was like I was like, man, that is an Ohio State kid. Like and they find a way to bring him around here. But it really smart, really engaging, and someone that I think understands his role and is excited for it. He said the resources here are significantly different than what he's been used to, and he can feel that immediately. And obviously the difference in his presence, just as far as the weight goes. So
It feels like immediate recency bias and being a prisoner of the moment, but I don't know that anyone has changed the perception of what they're going to give to Ohio State more in 2 practices than CJ Donaldson. Right?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
did you guys talk to Isaiah West at all?
I did not. Did
No,
you?
I spent most of my time with CJ Donaldson and a very brief period with Bo Jackson, which was funny because he smiled and he has braces, which is like, you're like this, but then
Yeah, Bo doesn't.
17 years old.
We also found out that his name is Bo Jackson.
It's Lamar.
It's Lamar
When
Jackson.
he got asked about being Bo Jackson a lot. And
Oh,
if you
wow.
watched Bo Jackson.
Wow.
And
How original.
what if you thought, how Bo Jackson played?
Someone asked that question?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Isaiah West is going to be a captain at Ohio State one day, and I hope people
There
go
we
back
go.
and watch his video. We don't do player videos because the sound's not worth it, but people are gonna love that kid once he's ready to go.
Why is that?
He's just like
Because he's from Philly.
he just has like a
Go Birds.
very engaging, domineering personality. Like he wants to be here. He loves Ohio State. He's not complaining that he's not able to go full speed ahead. Like he's just like, I'm telling you, just go find him on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure someone else has the video, but like really, really great personality. Gonna blow people away. And we're not going to talk about him through the spring because he's not going to participate,
Yeah.
but don't forget him.
It's still also really entertaining to listen to Carlos Lachlan talk about his position room, and then also when you get to watch him run practices. I after James Peoples was done, I was like, why is he telling you guys that you're wearing concrete shoes and unhitch the U-Haul? He's like, is that how he always talks? He's like, oh yeah. I'm like, how many of these coaching cliches does he have? He's got about 100 more. We've heard them all, and we're going to keep hearing them. But the way that he coaches, and I think the relationship building that he does is very impressive. We often put that in terms of recruiting success. And James Peoples said that, he's known Carlos Lachlan since he was a sophomore in high school, and then he came down to Texas to see him, and they've had that relationship, and the way that Carlos Lachlan talks to him has not changed from recruiting this school, that school, showing up and starting to coach him a year ago at this time in April. Like, this is the same guy, and the standard really doesn't change for that, and the way that they approach business remains consistent. And I think it's worth reiterating perhaps that the timing was not ideal, but Ohio State came out and Ryan Day came out of the other end with, I think, a really good coach, and he's had success. He was doing that with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, and you could say, well, maybe the jury's out. You're going to have to go do that again. You're going to have to reload the room, rebuild it. He seems to be doing that. Now, again, CJ Donaldson hasn't done that here. James Peoples hasn't done that here. Bo Jackson is still in practice number 2. To say that the work is all completely done would be folly, but the pieces are there. And I think the way that they get coached, even in a padless, non-contact practice, is like pretty eye-opening.
I feel like I got a snippet of the Carlos Lachlan experience because I was asking him about, so last year Quinshon Judkins and Will Howard accounted for almost all of Ohio State's low red zone rushing touchdowns. It was 85% or something like that. And I asked him was it important to add someone like CJ Donaldson who has a lot of size? And then he was talking about he had like Jordan James at Oregon. It was like 205 pounds, and like he was finishing drives in the red zone. And then he looked through my soul and said, "Just because you're big doesn't mean you're powerful." I was like, "All right, I think you're talking about me."
You see me, sir. See,
It's working on a lot of different levels.
Welcome to the Intimidated by Carlos Lockman fan club, which I remember sitting here last year when it was first practice going, oh my gosh, this dude is somewhat terrifying.
Founding member of that society.
I think the interesting thing is how small of a world the recruiting world makes college football, because CJ Donaldson, who spent 3 years at West Virginia, is asked, why did you come to Ohio State? Carlos Lockman. Like, because Carlos Lockman recruited him when he was
a receiver
in high school, and he, Carlos Lockman recruited Travion Henderson for Florida State, and Quinshon Judkins went to his high school. Like, there's all these things.
Are you saying it's beneficial for assistant coaches to cast a wide net when they're recruiting?
I do. That's actually what I'm getting at. I think you can actually do a lot of things if you have a very expansive network of recruits that you're still talked with.
That's interesting.
How about it?
It's good.
All right. Is there anything else from the quarterbacks or running backs that you want to get into?
No, just that I was scared.
You were scared.
Yeah.
That never happens to you.
I will say,
big guy from Philly, scared of Carlos Lockman.
I had asked someone here,
no soft batch cookies, all right?
About the early enrolled freshmen, and like, give me a quick snippet. Give me 5 guys that are gonna make it. Okay. And
this is 3 Thursday.
I was told Tavian St. Clair, Bo Jackson, Quincy Porter, Devin Sanchez, Fahim Delane. Those dudes are like impressing people.
Okay. All right.
Seeing Fahim Delane and Devin Sanchez sort of ingratiate themselves into that veteran group that stays after practice on Wednesday, I think they must have stayed for 45 minutes with Davison Igbinosun and Caleb Downs and Jermaine Matthews. That's a good group to get in with.
Fahim's another guy like Quincy Porter, who we talked about on Wednesday morning. Like, no one's really talking about him, but he was like really, really important to Ohio State in the recruiting.
We talked a lot about him, like, as we were recruiting, and then they got him. It's like, oh, great, all right, see you later.
It's done. You move on to the next thing. But I think it's another spot. It's like, how do they accumulate all this talent? Like, it's crazy in the secondary. Well, I guess those banners back there help.
Be a champion.
Champion. They're going to.
Sorry, Tennessee.
They're not up there. We already discovered that this week. But you watch those guys work, and it's exciting. The defensive line was doing the same thing, and C.J. Hicks bringing that up again. I just think the way that they've gone about practice and extra reps through the first 2 days, like, I'm a little bit sad now that we won't get to see how that continues to progress. And the next time, as you said, Bill, will be Student Appreciation Day on April 5th, and we'll probably come in here and be like, these guys don't even look like true freshmen at all anymore, because they've had 2 weeks of work, and they'll know how everything goes and works and operates. And I'm excited for that part. I'm going to miss that we're not in here until then, but at least we'll see the end of post-practice, and those guys will still be working.
We'll be in here 4 days next week, so we'll see a lot of the guys, just not the actual practice.
I know. And maybe that'll be better.
You can tell on their faces who's up and who's down, who's sullen, who's not.
Who's bubbly.
Yeah. All right.
Who's been canoodling, who's been discanoodling.
That's a callback. If you watch Snap Judgments on Wednesday, you'll understand that reference. And if not, catch up now. But this has been a 3 guys.
Ish.
3-ish things.
3 dudes.
3 dudes Thursday. That's what I called it a long time ago on the Podcast Daily. Still more to come. This week is not over as we continue talking about Ohio State and spring football. And we talk about that all year round. But got one more Podcast Daily this week with Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you later.